you have the vintage cuvee 2019 in front of you today. So first of all, I'd like to say Happy Earth Day because it fits into what I'm going to be talking about. But for those of you that don't know Nova Scotia, first of all, I want to talk about why we do sparkling here. Um, I know I'm a winemaker from BC from a long time ago, and what I knew what I knew about Nova Scotia was Peggy's Cove, and I knew something about apples in the Annapolis Valley, and that might be what you kind of think about, or you might have some closer ties. I married a maritime girl, 9 generations in Nova Scotia. So we moved home to Nova Scotia in 2004, almost 20 years ago now, and the, the the climate in Nova Scotia is very affected by the Bay of Fundy. You guys have heard of Tidal Bay. We have an Appalachian wine out here called Tidal Bay. Every wine does a certain version of it with different varietals, and it's referring to the Bay of Fundy. So it affects our climate very dramatically. Highest tides in the world, of course. Everyone's heard of that. It goes in and out every day. It creates a moderating effect for our region. So right now I'm in Gaspereau, which is in the Gaspereau Valley. It's a little hamlet in Gaspereau, and the Gaspereau is a sub-valley to the Annapolis Valley, famous for apples and becoming famous for wines. And in our area, there's 4 wineries in the Gaspereau Valley. You might think of it as the beginning days in Prince Edward County. So 4 wineries in Gaspereau Valley, and then in the larger area, probably about 8 wineries within about a 10-minute drive from each other. And we're all right on the edge of the Bay of Fundy, protected by the North Mountains. And that moderating effect gives us longer seasons. Our seasons go into, it's almost t-shirt weather still in October, November, December. We didn't see any snow until late January, early February this year, or this past year. So it keeps us warm. It warms up during the summer and gives off that moderating heat. So we're able to grow grapes because of that. Otherwise, it'd be quite cold. But also, we're not too hot. So a lot of times in the Okanagan Valley, where I first started making wine, it was always a challenge to pick grapes at proper ripeness. The flavors were there. It was physiologically ripe without getting high sugar levels, because it was 40 degrees Celsius a lot of times and the sugar levels were increasing so dramatically. So we had to pick sometimes when they weren't quite ripe. I can honestly say in Nova Scotia, I have not made a compromise with sparkling wine yet. We've been here 20 years. So we get ripeness in the grapes at moderate sugar levels. And perhaps more importantly, because of climate change, we're maintaining our acidity as well. And what that means is, with moderate sugar levels, it means that we can pick at, I'm not going to get very technical with you guys, but maybe on a Saturday morning in the middle of a wine festival, maybe it's the time to be technical, I don't know. But the vintage cuvee that you have in front of you was picked at 17 bricks, for instance, which is about a potential alcohol of 10% alcohol, and with very good acidity. 2019 was actually a cool year compared to the last 3 years that we've had, and so moderate alcohol, so you don't get boozy alcohol sparklings, but more importantly, there's freshness there. It's lively because we can retain our acidity in our growing seasons. So that's a big part of why sparkling wine is made in Nova Scotia. The vintage cuvee that you have was 90 points at Wine Line last year. the National Wine Awards, and in fact, it adds to 3 years in a row of 90 points or more. And we've also won awards in France for our sparkling at Effervescence du Monde, multiple years at Decanter in London. So people are noticing what kind of sparkling wines are made in Nova Scotia. And it's mainly because of our climate and our terroir. The property that we chose in the Gaspereau Valley is very rocky. It's an ancient seabed, and so it's very well drained. If you know the Champagne terroir, it's chalky soil, and a lot of times the soil's white right at the surface. It's all chalk, and but the higher end Grand Cru parcels in Champagne for Rodier making Cristal and Dom Perignon, those are the terroirs that have a little bit of topsoil on top and then the chalk. And so we found this property in the Gaspereau Valley, 30 acres, and it's got about 6 to 8 inches of topsoil on top of gravels, schist, sandstone, very rocky, well drained. And we've been getting flavors that are typical for a high mineralized soil. So we get mineral flavors in our wine, and as the roots are about 3 feet deep now, this would have been planted in 05. I can't do the math right now, but that would have been 14 years, 14-year-old vines. And I know at 17 years, they were about 3 feet deep. And so it's like having kids with grapevines. You don't want to give them everything. If it was beautiful clay loam at the surface, all the roots would be up there. But because they had to reach deep, they're 3 feet deep and going deeper and deeper, accessing the minerals and the flavors from that rocky soil. So our flavors, because it's an ancient seabed, we get a little bit of slight saline, and also a lot of mineral flavors. We also, in the aromas, we're getting more and more orange. A lot of times it's juicy orange, sometimes it's kind of zesty orange, but it's a big part, and we get those comments from judges when we send our wines to competitions. So citrus in general, but more specifically more of a zesty orange, juicy orange. And I like to think that's from the soil as well. The Lacadie grapevine. So we've named the winery Lacadie Vineyards because we're in the heart of Acadia. Acadie, the French call it. Before the British controlled this area, and it was an homage to the heritage of that beautiful history. Well, actually, beautiful and tragic history. But there's a great variety called Lacadie Blanc as well. It was brought out here from Ontario, from the breeding program. Dr. Helen Fisher at Vineland Research Center. Came out here, and the forward-thinking research scientists out here was just a number at that point, saw its potential for Nova Scotia, eventually became called Lacadie Blanc. And it grows quite well and here, and we're about 80% Lacadie Blanc and about 20% a mixture of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir on our property. And a lot of wineries are about 80% Lacadie, or sometimes other grape varieties like that, and about 20% vinifera, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. We also farm organically. We've just recently become certified for biocyclic vegan as well. So certified organic means we don't use any synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides. So and that goes through from soil to glass. So in the vineyard, but also in our winemaking. So no GMO products, especially with our biocyclic vegan certification. It means no animal products. So, and that's soil to glass as well. So in the vineyard, no manures. We use composted grape skins for compost teas and ameliorating the soil with nutrients to maintain our healthy soil. And then in winemaking, we don't use any animal parts either. And it becomes important for sparkling wine. I just want to note this, that so to create the bubbles in the bottle, it's called terroir liqueur. So and a little bit of yeast is added to the bottle and it ferments in the bottle. That terroir liqueur is usually cane sugar. And for vegan and for certified organic, we don't use white sugar because it's traditionally filtered through animal bone-based filter media, chard, to get the color out. So we use from Paraguay a sugar that's unfiltered. So that's for our terroir liqueur and for our dosage as well. Okay, so a little bit of details about the wine. I can't see you guys, so I can't see if everyone's sipping while I'm talking. So as I mentioned in the beginning, 2019 was one of the last cool years that we've had for a while anyways, and so very good freshness, acidity. And I usually, I think, I forget what I said on the tasting sheet, but ageability is incredible with this because of that acidity with a lot of our sparklings. And dosage is always related to the acid balance. And so we do very careful dosage trials to determine when we riddle the yeast out of the bottle and pop the cap. It has a specialized crown cap at that point to get and freeze the neck and push the ice plug out with all the yeast in it. Then we can add some dosage to it to balance the natural acidity. And like I said, we do dosage trials for every vintage and decide how much to add. And when the acid is higher, in general, it's a little bit more dosage to balance that. So this it's just on the verge of being a brut style. It's, I think it's 12 or 13 grams per liter. And with VQA standards, it's 15 grams per liter or less for brut style. So it's on the upper end of brut, but it's still brut. So the balance, we go after balance with that dosage level. Terroir-wise, aging-wise, when it's aging on its side, on its yeast sleeves, with vintage cuvee, we usually go for 2 to 3 years. And the goal with that is to get yeast characters from the yeast contact. So toastiness, brioche, and with the French call it harmony, but when you make up your base wine, so this is L'Acadie and a little bit of Cédel Blanc. When you make up your base wine, you don't want it to be too fruity because that conflicts. It can conflict with the yeast, toasty yeast characters from aging. So we find 2 to 3 years is perfect for that blend. With some of our rosés, which are a little bit fruitier, we release them a little bit earlier for, once again, that harmony. And so it's a little bit of toastiness, and then, like I said, the terroir flavors from our site are saline, minerality, and from our rocky soil.